Welcome to Unleash the Awesome with Dave Gambrill. All of us have unique skills, talents, and abilities that aren't being used to their full potential. Our mission is to share the people, tools, apps, and other resources that will help you unleash your awesome on the world.
Yo, what's up? It's Dave. Welcome to another episode of Unleash the Awesome. Today, I am thrilled to have my friend, an online business mentor and coach, and the person who actually inspired me to go full-time with this business online, Amy Porterfield, sharing some of the big mistakes that people make when they are building and scaling their online business and how to avoid them, more importantly. And if you listen to our conversation, I asked her a lot of questions around the transition from moving from a full-time job to believing that it was possible for her to strike out full-time on her own and build something. And you'll hear she had a lot of hiccups. She made a lot of mistakes. She had a lot of things not work exactly the way she wanted to. And I'm sure you all can relate to that. I know I can. But if you listen to our entire conversation, you will learn how she persevered, some of the key things that she knew she had to implement in that process. And I would encourage you to listen to the very end, because she is doing something right now and providing some incredible support to those of you that either want to start this process, or maybe you have started and you want a little jump start. You want help. You want somebody to hold your hand a little bit and move you through that early phase so you can be more successful. She's doing something really amazing, and we share the details about that at the very end. So without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with my friend, Amy Porterfield. So Amy, thank you so much for joining us today on Unleash the Awesome. This has been years in the making on my end, so I'm so glad to have you today. Thanks.
I am so happy to be here. I'm glad we finally got to connect. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. I'm really looking forward to this. I've been asking people in my audience, if you'd spend an hour with Amy, what would you ask her? And, what are some mistakes that you've made, or what are some challenges that you have? So I have a whole list of questions we can get into, but I think it would be most valuable to start with how you started on this journey, because a lot of people know you as what I call you as the digital course creator queen, right? You show people how to do that. But I think a lot of people meet you, me, other people in the space, and they go, well, I could never do that. These people are so awesome. They just we just showed up on the scene or something and magically knew how to do this stuff. But I know a little bit about your backstory, about how you came from kind of corporate America and how you went into the space. And I think it might be awesome if you'd be okay with sharing how you got started and what the early days were like for you.
Ooh, I'd love to share that, because it was a little bit of a rocky start, to say the least. So I work for peak performance coach Tony Robbins, and I was deep into corporate. I always thought I would climb that corporate ladder forever. I had my sights set up on those big promotions and positions, and I was really actually happy in that. I love the security of corporate. I love the fact that I got a regular paycheck, had benefits, had a great job. All of that was wonderful. And I got to work with Tony Robbins, which was pretty cool. I was the director of content development, which meant I got to travel the world with Tony and work on the content that he did at events like Unleash the Power Within and Date with Destiny. It was incredible. But there was this one meeting that Tony had where he invited a bunch of internet marketers to the table in our San Diego office, and he wanted to hear more about their online businesses and their digital courses. This is very humbling, I was brought into the meeting to take notes. And so I wasn't even sitting at the main table, and the guys went around and talked about all the different things that they were doing in their business. And all I heard was freedom. They were calling the shots, and they were creating really cool things, and they were making big decisions, and they were working when they wanted to work, where they wanted to work, how they wanted to work. And I thought, I don't know what these guys are doing, but I want a piece of this. And that was the first moment in my entire life, I was in my early 30s, that I thought, I want something different. And so fast forward about a year from that point, and I finally found the courage to take the leap and go out on my own. Now, I had learned how to do digital courses when I was still with Robbins, but I didn't really know exactly how to get started or what exactly it took. I just kind of worked in the marketing department on some of those digital course launches. So I went out on my own, thought I'm going to create courses, teach online marketing, which is my specialty, but I didn't know how to do it. So I decided to take a bunch of clients. So I did social media for small businesses for about 2 years and realized I hated the business I started because I was working with clients that had crazy expectations. I was the typical yes girl. I said I would do anything they wanted, and then I resented them afterwards. So it was not a really good combination. I didn't start a business that I loved. And so 2 years in, I thought, I've got to change this. And that's when I decided to start creating digital courses and figuring it out. Now, my first digital course, I made $267. And then I cried for about a week afterwards, thinking, I'm not cut out to do this. I'm not a good entrepreneur. This is never going to work. I'm going to have to grovel for my job back. And all the emotions came with that. But thank goodness I stuck with it. My husband's like, get out there, get back in the game. So he kind of pushed me back. We all need somebody like that. And over time, my courses became more popular and profitable to the point that it got to a point that all people asked me was, how do you create these profitable digital courses? How do you do the webinars the way you do it? So that's years into it. That's where I finally found my sweet spot.
That's amazing. And thank you for sharing that, because, I think a lot of people think like, hey, you're just going to come out and create a course or create some content and make 6 figures and live the laptop lifestyle and all that jazz. And the other side, I think it was fascinating. You said $267, right?
Yeah.
I try to encourage people now, I'm like, go make that first dollar, go make that first $267, go make whatever. Because even though you kind of teed that up as a failure and not something that was, that you loved, I'm sure there was a little bit of like, wait a second, now I know that I could do this and it's possible. I just need to tweak it a little bit, right?
I love that you said that. Yes, because a lot of my students, they'll make a certain amount of money their first launch and it's not as much as they expected. And they think that's a failure, but you are so right. When you know how to make a few $100s online, you can make a few thousand. When you know how to make a few thousand, you can make a few 100,000. I know that sounds simplifying it way down, but it's actually very true. So getting that courage to make your first dollar online leads to some more confidence where you start making more strategic decisions that could lead to a really great income. So you're absolutely right. Let's just focus on making that first dollar.
Yeah, that's the key, I think, for a lot of people. And I will often say, look, you can move the decimal spot, one spot to the right, and you can move another spot to the right. And people go like, they're like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, no, really, you can. Once you figure out how to do this, it's a really amazing and powerful setup. So now you've become known as the person who helps people create amazing courses. And I would imagine through the thousands and thousands of students that you have and through your own experience, you've probably made a few mistakes. You've probably seen people make a few mistakes, and you've probably seen people just run into this without any planning. So I'd love to have you answer, like, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make as they're going out to do this? Because for me, I'm more about the wow than how. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs might be wired like that, of just like, wow, let's go do this. And we don't necessarily think about the steps or the things that we should be doing. So I'd imagine you could help us on that a little bit.
Absolutely, because I love that, the wow versus the how. I am all the how, and I probably could use a little more wow in my life. So I am very structured and very step by step, which has proven to be something that's helped me along the way, because I teach a lot of people how to do things. So first of all, when you're thinking about digital courses, one of the biggest mistakes I see along the way is not understanding what type of course you want to create. And so what I mean by that is there are 3 different types of really profitable digital courses, and I'll break them down really quickly. There's a starter course, a spotlight course, and a signature course. So a starter course is that 101 jumping off point. So getting people started in something that they are curious about, but not giving them a full transformation, not promising huge results. You're just going to get them started and get them going. So that's a starter course. Usually anywhere from $100 to $200 is what you'd charge for something like that. Now, a spotlight course is where you take one area of your expertise and you drill down into that area. So for example, one of my students, Rob Green, he's a photographer. He created a course that is all about flash photography. So he knows a lot about photography, but he just did a course on flash photography. So a spotlight on one area of expertise. And he had 100 people on his email list and made $12,000, way more than I ever made on my first course or even my second course for that.
Wait, can I stop you there for 1 second?
Yeah.
How many people on his email list?
100 people.
And how much did he make?
$12,000.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure everybody heard that.
Because I'm going to come back to another mistake people make thinking they have to have a big email list. We'll come back to that one as well, because this is proof that you do not need hundreds of thousands of people on your email list to make good money with courses. So that's a spotlight course. And then the third course is a signature course. This is like the Mac Daddy of all courses, where you are taking people through a huge transformation. And so that course is going to be robust. It's going to take you longer to create. It will take a student longer to get through, but there's a big transformation at the end. Usually you would charge anywhere from $500 all the way up to $3,000 for a course like that. So knowing what type of course you want to create, and usually a first-time course creator, I'm going to suggest a starter or a spotlight course, allows you to then start thinking about the content that you want to put in it. Because the second mistake I see a lot of people make is they try to throw everything in the kitchen sink into their first course because they want to prove that they know their stuff. There's a lot of imposter syndrome that most of us deal with as entrepreneurs, especially when we're starting out. So you want to prove yourself. So I see these courses with way too much content in them. And the thing is, your students want the fastest way from point A to point B without any of the fluff. And so you've got to really refrain and kind of take some of that out of there, which leads me to reminding people, if you're going to create a digital course, you just need a 10% edge. And what I mean by that is you need to have gotten results for yourself or for somebody else, a family member, a friend, a client, and you're willing to teach other people how you got those results. So you just need to have that 10% edge. You're 10% ahead of those that you serve, meaning you don't need 10 years of education. You don't need fancy certifications. You need results. And we all have gotten results in one area or another in our business or in our personal lives. So I believe everyone has a course in them. But the mistake is thinking you need to wait till you're more educated, more knowledgeable, more skilled. Everyone has a course in them right now. I have no doubt about that. So something to think about.
And I totally agree that if you,
that one?
Yeah. So if I can jump in there for a second, do you find that people, when they get started, like one of the bits of advice I give to people is like, just go create a course. I don't care what you create a course on, a mini course or a starter course. Like just go create something on how to do knitting or how to launch a lemonade stand or like whatever it is. Like it doesn't need to be your signature thing. I think a lot of people that I encounter get stuck with this, like, I need to wait for this grand idea, or I need to wait for this thing that is going to be this full encompassing course that I could be known as for the rest of my entire life. But you said in your story, that's not how you started. You were teaching something else and now you're teaching on courses, right? And I think people make these pivots. So do you find that a lot in your community, that people get started teaching something and then it evolves, or they get feedback from their audience and then they might pivot a little bit or maybe shift to something else altogether based on what they learned?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the beautiful thing about that is, if you will just get started with something, you will learn so much about what you like, what you don't like, what your audience wants, what they don't want. Like, the clarity when you take action is so powerful. So I absolutely believe, let's just get something out there. You'll start to kind of figure out what your next move is going to be. And also, I always tell my students, the way your business looks today will look dramatically different 1, 2, 5 years down the road. So nothing's set in stone. So all you need to do is go forward with the spirit of experimenting, and you absolutely never know what might happen for you and what doors will open up. So yes, let's just get going, get something out there. That's why I love, in Digital Course Academy, I welcome so many students into my world who still have a 9-to-5 job, but they have a few ideas, not even sure what they want to do with the course yet, but they just want to try something. And a lot of times that digital course morphs into something bigger and they leave their 9-to-5 job behind. But that wasn't always the mission in the beginning. So I am a huge proponent of experimenting and just trying something.
Awesome. And I would imagine that people get some feedback from the people in their sphere of influence about what it is they could teach on. Like in my case, I don't tell this story very often, but one of my first courses was showing people how to use Trello. Like one of my first successful courses, because I sat down at an event, actually a Jeff Walker event, mutual friend of ours.
Yeah.
And somebody at the table said, I'm built a course and I'm making all this money teaching people how to use Evernote. And I was like, isn't that free? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. You're showing people how to use it. And she said, yeah, but like, it's just so basic and sparse. Like if you don't know what to do with it or you don't have ideas, like how do you use it? So she said, I have a course. And I was like, man, that's crazy. And then a few months later, I was using Trello. People are asking me about Trello. And I was like, I don't want to be known as the Trello guy. Like that's not my thing. I'm not super tech savvy or like productivity. Like that's not what I want to do. But I created a starter course and I got it out there and I got it going and priced it at $97 and did surprisingly well with it and learned a lot in the process. So I think as people are hearing your story, your student stories, my stories, like just get it out there and go. And from there, the movement brings some clarity, but you got to get in the game.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. It's not like you said, okay, now that I created this course on Trello, I have to be the Trello expert for the rest of my life. Like it's just opening doors to new opportunities. So I love that. And one other reason why I love your story is because people don't realize, wait a second, I don't have to be the person that starts the software in order to teach it. I've got another one of my students. She's an interior designer and she built her business by using this one piece of software that only people in interior design would know, but they wanted to know why her business was so successful. And she said, I use this tool to manage everything I do. Created a course around it, made over $100,000. So there's so many different types of courses you can create in so many areas. So I'm glad you shared that.
Cool. Thank you. So before I interrupted you, you were sharing some of the mistakes and you were about to jump on to another one of the mistakes.
Okay. So one of the ones that I kind of hinted at was the email list.
Yeah.
So a lot of people get hung up on the fact that they'll say, but Amy, I can't create a course right now because I don't have an audience. And what I'll say is you do need an audience. There's no magic pill around this one. I can't sugarcoat it. You've got to have an audience. And I don't believe social media is enough. Although my students always prove me wrong and they'll say, no, Amy, I made 5 figures with my first launch and I just use social media. I'm like, okay, but that is not going to sustain you long-term. You need an email list. Absolutely. But you do not need an email list full of hundreds of thousands of people. I have proof after proof of 100 people, 200 people, 300 people max, and people are making 5 and 6 figures with their courses. So what you need to do is get started with your email list yesterday. The best next day is today. We're just going to start and stop putting it off and start just growing that email list slowly. A lot of my students, while they're creating their first digital course, will also begin to grow their email list. They do it at the same time. It works perfectly. But please do not create a digital course because you don't have an email list. That is something you can get up and running within 30, 60, 90 days. Boom, you've got an email list. And never again will you have to say, but I don't have a list. So it's a big one that stops people in their tracks, and it absolutely does not need to. So now everything I teach, there's always a component of list building so I can get people over that hump because it comes up a lot and I don't want that to slow people down. In the beginning, was list building ever a challenge for you?
It was definitely a challenge for me. And as I look back, I was doing it. So like I go all the way back to the link exchange days, then the banner ad days. So like building an email list wasn't really a priority back then when everybody just had an AOL account, I guess. But as I look back through the internet Wayback Machine, I did actually have opportunities for people to join my newsletter or whatever. So I have been a pretty big proponent of this for a while. And if anybody has followed me more than 5 minutes, they've heard me say, build your email list. Like I said, if you don't listen to anything else I say, for anything you're going to do in this space, you got to build your email list. Build your audience. Don't build it on rented land, like you mentioned on social media or other places, because they change those rules and then your audience is gone.
Yes.
But I love what you said about you don't need 100,000 people. You don't need 1,000 people, 100 people, if they're the right buyers, if they're the right people. And I know you teach a lot of strategies about how to attract the actual right people, not just building a list, or I know a lot of people try to buy a list or rent a list, which I think is a terrible idea. I would imagine you're probably in that same camp. So, how do you create and how do you attract the people that actually want to buy your thing? And I know that you talk a fair amount about that in the stuff that you offer.
Absolutely. I think it's a really important one. So that's one that usually will stop people in their tracks. Another mistake I see for course creators is that they will create their course and put it out into the world, but there was no validation. And so nobody buys. And then they think, why did I just go through all of this? I'm not cut out to be an entrepreneur. I got to stick with my 9-to-5 job, which is absolutely not true. So I always teach my students, let's start validating the idea before you actually create the course. And the best validation is to pre-sell it. So this is something that I learned from a mutual friend of ours, Stu McLaren, and he's a dear, dear friend, and he teaches people how to create memberships. I teach people how to create courses. So we always say we're like peanut butter and jelly. We go together really well. But one of the things that he teaches is founding members, where you float this idea out there that you're going to create something new, let people know what it is, and actually have a really simple page where they can read a little bit about it and actually give you their money. And you typically will discount so that people can get in your course for the first time before you've ever created it. So I've taken this idea and kind of made it my own, and I call it the first 10. And so I teach my students, let's get 10 people to pay you before you actually create the course. And let's say you float the idea out there and nobody wants to buy it. Beautiful, wonderful. Let's not create the course or talk about the course in that way. Let's go back to the drawing board, figure out where we missed the mark, and let's go back out. And so that way you don't waste your time, because a lot of people will say, I don't want to spend all this time creating a course and then no one will buy. I'm like, I don't want you to do that either. So the validation of pre-selling your course, and I teach this step by step in my program, but if you pre-sell your course, then you can move forward with confidence that the time you're putting into creating that course is going to be worth it. So not validating, big mistake I see.
That's wonderful feedback. But how do you assuage the people that I know will say, but Amy, this is like walking on a tightrope across the Grand Canyon without a net. Like, I have to see every step of the process before I do it. Like, I have to build it. I have to have it all set. I have to have it all just right. I can't pre-sell it. That doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sure you encounter people like that, right?
I have. So there's two ways to look at that. The first thing is, I don't have people go out and pre-sell before they have it all figured out, because I actually think that's not full of integrity. Like, I want you to sell something you know is going to be good and that you have figured out the foundation for it. So I teach my students how to fully flesh out an outline. And I'm not talking about a bare bones titles and subtitles outline. I mean some detail in there. What stories are you telling? What examples are you using? What lessons are you teaching? And in what order are you teaching this? So by the time they pre-sell, they're very clear about what they're selling, which gives you more confidence to talk about it. So there's some steps we take first to kind of figure that out. I am such a planner to the point that it's to my detriment. So I get that sentiment to want to actually have it all figured out. It's just that if no one's going to pay for it, you don't have the time to you can't waste all that time. So you've got to put yourself out there. But typically what I hear is people are scared to put themselves out there. So they'll say, oh, no, I got to have it all figured out. No, really what's under that is that you are fearful of saying, hey, everyone, I'm selling something. And the first time you do that, I'm sure you can relate as well. That is very scary to say, I'm selling something. And if we get into like some of the imposter syndrome around that, what are people going to think of me? What are people going to say? What if nobody buys? I'm going to look like an idiot. All of that stuff. Like, if you want to check on your ego, become an entrepreneur, because my ego is checked every single day, 13 years in still. So you have to be aware that those things are going to come up, but what is the alternative? If you want to eventually leave a 9-to-5 job, you've got to start experimenting with the side hustle. And a digital course is a beautiful thing for a side hustle. And also, let's say you have left your 9-to-5 job. We got to make this work. You're in it for the long haul. You have to put yourself out there. So I think that's one of the biggest obstacles, and probably why some people will get into my world, say they want to create a course and they don't finish it because fear stopped them. And I know that feeling very, very well, but I also know that what I want. And so getting clear on your why, we've heard it a million times, right? Getting clear, why do you want this? What will this do for your family? What will this do for you, your business? I think some of that, taking the time to understand that, allows you to get through the really hard days when you don't want to put yourself out there, but you still do.
I'm so glad you said that, because I run into a fair amount of people that say, why do all these courses start with mindset? Why is it all about finding your why and your purpose and your passion and all this stuff? And I will say, listen, you're going to hit speed bumps on the road to progress. And some days you'll just power over them. And other days you're going to be like, why am I doing this? And if you don't know what you're doing it for, you will stop, you will quit. It's so easy to stop and quit and just revert back to your 9 to 5 or whatever it is you're doing, because that's what we're comfortable with. So I'm so glad you addressed that. And it's been really fun over the last few years, like watching how you navigate this with your audience on your webinars and stuff, because that question comes up a fair amount. And just seeing how you say, like, no, you got to get your why figured out. You got to know exactly what you're doing this for, because that's the only way that you're going to power through.
It's so true. For years and years, I didn't teach anything around the mindset. I just felt like it wasn't my place. I'm not an expert. I come from Tony Robbins. I'm not the motivational speaker. Right. So it wasn't part of my conversation. And as I saw my students struggle with getting to the finish line, I thought I could teach them all the strategies in the world. But if they don't understand that they can't believe everything they think, and if they don't know how to move past those negative thoughts that are going to come up every day, nothing I teach is going to even make a difference. So it became a really big part of my trainings as well.
That's great. So I'm sure you have a couple more, because I know we have a little time left, a couple more mistakes that people make.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk some tactics.
Okay,
One of the things that I've seen a lot of my course creators where they make a mistake, like if they go through my course and they're like, Amy, I did everything you said to do and I didn't make any money. And I'll say, okay, first of all, that's like the worst thing you want to hear as a course creator, but sometimes it happens. But then I'll say, okay, so tell me about your webinar. And they'll say, well, I didn't do a webinar. I'm like, okay, so let's back up here. So the thing is, webinars to me are the most powerful vehicle for selling a digital course. And sometimes I'll hear people that have been around for a while, do webinars still really work? And I will tell you, absolutely, they work really, really well. Now, has the face of the webinar, the look and feel changed since 13 years ago when I started? Absolutely. When I started on the scene, video on webinar was not even a thing. And it was just slides and audio through the whole thing. And the technology was not nearly as sophisticated as it is today. But today, webinars are so much easier and they're such a great way to show your personality and your teaching style. So what I always tell my students is, I know it's scary. I know that technology can go down. I've been on webinars where no one can hear me at the time that I was pitching my product. Literally that moment, the audio went out. I've had times where the technology just wouldn't work at all and the whole thing crashed. I lost my voice one time and had to cancel a webinar of 1,000 people. Like, I've been through it all, but I still do webinars to this day. And the beautiful thing is, when I get on a webinar, I say in my mind, no matter if they buy or not, they walk away today feeling inspired, excited, and driven to take action, no matter if they buy or not. And that instantly puts me into a place that I am here to serve and add value. And if you go into your webinars thinking, I'm going to teach my buns off, I'm going to teach them things that they are going to find so valuable and they're going to fall in love with me because I'm here for the right reason, when you get to the selling portion of that webinar, the people who are paying attention are those that genuinely got value from you and they want to know their next steps. It's a very easy sell at that point. So you can do other things. You can do quizzes. You can do 3-part video series. I think those are powerful as well. So I'm here to say you need a sales vehicle for your digital course. So I think webinars are the best. Other people might say a sales video or a challenge or whatever, but the mistake is thinking you could post on social media and send a few emails and you're good. And that is plain small. And that's the little bit of tough love some people need to hear, because back when I started, in my first launch that I did, I was in a mastermind with Marie Forleo. She was leading this mastermind many, many years ago. And I told her, I'm just going to send out a few emails and post on social. And she said, you might as well just go home then. And it was like, whoa. And she's like, Amy, stop playing small. Are you in it to win it or what? And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the webinar. I'm going to show up. So webinars or whatever vehicle you want to use are a must. And a little sprinkle on social media and a little email magic is not enough to make the kind of money you deserve for the work you put into creating that course. I feel like I'm on my soapbox now, so I'll step off, but I'm very passionate about this one topic.
I didn't know you were passionate from your tone of voice. I couldn't tell at all. But I'm glad that you brought that up, because I'll run into that with my audience too. They're like, I don't want to do that, blah, blah, blah. I want to hide behind, my course. And I have told people in the past, because, I've talked about you and promoted your stuff for years because I believe in it, because I've gone through your course myself a couple times, actually. Sometimes I'll say to people, look, I don't care what else you do. I don't care what else you pay attention to in Amy's launch. Go watch her webinar and watch a masterclass on how to give a webinar. Even if you don't understand what she's saying or you don't take notes on what, I want you to take notes on how she's doing it, because she is so good at it. At the end, I think even if you weren't paying attention to her content, you'll end up wanting to buy whatever she's selling because she's so good at it. And I've just watched you evolve this throughout the years, and with other people that I might work with or partner with in the marketplace, to your point, they've said, I'm not going to do webinars, I'm not going to do this, whatever, but you show up powerfully every single time. And you have some really cool things that you do inside your webinars to get people to stick and stay, because we all know it's one thing to get people to register. It's another thing to get people to show up. And it's a third thing to get people to show up and stay. And you're really, really good at getting people to stay.
Yeah, thank you for that. And there's a lot of strategies that I teach to help my students with that, because it is an issue for sure. Also, I love what you said about the fact that I've been doing these webinars for so long. I want to point out to those that are listening that I've taught webinars for, at least 10 years now. And so I had a course called Webinars That Convert many years ago and all of that. So I was doing well back then. I was teaching webinars, I was getting people results, I was making money. But let's fast forward 10 years now. Now I have 10 years more experience. I'm still teaching webinars. I'm still doing my thing, but I'm way better at it. But that didn't stop me 10 years ago from teaching what I knew at that point. Sure, I'm better now, but I was good then and I got it out then. So imagine if I'm like 10 years, I got 10 years under my belt, then I'll teach webinars. I would never have a multi-million-dollar business like I do today. So you just start with what you've got and where you're good, and you'll get great over time. But I just feel like, back to the conversation, people just won't start because they feel like they need to know more. That is such a mistake.
So glad you said that, because I feel like I say that a lot to my audience. Maybe if they hear it from somebody else, maybe they'll be like, wow, Amy said the smartest thing today. Like, oh, really?
You're like, thanks, guys. Thanks.
Yeah. So, which is like part of the reason why I think I did my podcast in the first place, is like, I tell people things and they don't listen, and you bring on other people and they listen. So it's like, okay, whatever. If that's what it takes to make it work, then that's what we'll do. So
exactly. I totally agree with you. Okay. So I have one more mistake that comes up a lot. And this is that a lot of people think they have to make their course look like the courses that they're buying from like people that have been around for a long time. So if you bought Digital Course Academy, you'll notice that I do direct to camera, like this video in every single lesson. I have beautiful lighting. I had a film crew come in. I'm reading a teleprompter for some of it. Like, it is really pristine. And it sure as heck didn't look like that when I was creating courses 10, 13 years ago or whatever. So we cannot compare where we are right now to somebody else's course when, first of all, I teach this stuff. I better be good at it. 13 years in, it's time, and I make a lot of money so I can invest money back into my business. But that's not where my students are starting. So the myth or the mistake is that I need a film crew. I need fancy equipment. I need beautiful lighting. You do not need any of that. What you need are results that you promise to teach your students and get them where they want to go. Your content matters so much more than your lighting or your film crew or all of that stuff. And I tell a lot of my students, you can just do audio and slides in your course. You do not need to be direct to camera like this throughout your entire course. Most of my students are not comfortable with that in the beginning. So the mistake is thinking it needs to look like the people who have been doing it forever. Absolutely not. And I think that's why a lot of people don't pull the trigger and actually go for it. So we're not looking for anything fancy. I always say, keep it simple, get fancy later. Fancy later is 3-4 courses down the road. First course, bare bones. We're keeping it as simple as we can.
That's wonderful advice. I heard somebody last year say like, oh, look at Tony Robbins. He has this like amazing thing that he built, this wraparound screen that he's got down in Florida and whatever, and like all these lights, and I need all that stuff. I'm like, man, I'm going to sound like an old man here, but like when I got started back in the day, we had this thing called flip cams.
Oh, yes.
We didn't even have video on our phones because
oh my gosh. You and I, we must be around the same age because, or how long have you been in this game?
So I've been doing this like 15, 20 years.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, so we both were doing it back. I forgot about the flip cams.
Yeah. And I remember taking a course from our mutual friend, James Wedmore, he's teaching people how to do video on these little things. Like the screens were tiny. And I think in some way, maybe you and I had a little bit of a benefit starting back then because there wasn't so much choice. It was just like,
Agree.
this is all you could do. You go build your website on GeoCities or some other, website. There weren't a lot of choices then. And then you just did it. And now I think there's so many choices that people get a little confused, and there's a paradox of choice, which I know you're also really good at helping people get through, of like, what platforms to think about and which ones are good, and the pros and the cons of all that stuff, which can I think stop people too, because they think like, okay, well, I'm going to do all this, but then where do I put it, or how do I host it, and whatever. And I know you do a bunch of things yourself and recommend stuff. I recommend stuff.
That's a big one. Technology, or making choices on the technology. I tend to make decisions quickly. Sometimes I regret them, but I tend to move forward quickly. However, I'm always surprised, but then I shouldn't be, that my students are stuck. Like, Amy, do I do Kajabi or Searchie? Which one should I do? And so it comes up a lot in my courses. And one thing that I teach my students to do is I'll say, whatever you're teaching, they might want your recommendations, whether it be for cookbooks that you use or dog training tools, whatever your niche is, they're going to want some recommendations. I used to give like 10 options. Like, here are all of them out there. Here's some pros and cons. Now I'm like, wait, I'm the expert. They're paid me to cut through the noise. So I will always only recommend 1 or 2 tools in one area, and that is it. Email, I recommend Convertkit. I think it's the best. It's great for beginners. Let's do it. They can go and look for 10 others, but I'm the expert. And I want my students to have that confidence as well. Let's cut down the recommendations and do the ones you love. And of course, you would appreciate this. Always be an affiliate for those tools. Like, never miss your opportunity. It's an extra way to make money with courses.
Indeed. Yeah. And that's really how I've built most of my businesses. I created some stuff, and then people said, well, how did you do that? I'm like, well, this is what I did. And that became a business onto itself, which was not something I ever planned. So I think a lot of people, again, want to begin with the end in mind and think of this like signature thing, but I kind of stumbled my way into where I am now because people kept asking me questions about this stuff of what tools are you using and how do you get through all this stuff. And I thought, there are going to be multiple tools coming out every single year, and people are always going to need to navigate this. So I'll just kind of step in that gap and help people with it, which is pretty cool.
I love that. I love your success in that fact that you've been around for so long, because you've probably seen the same thing. I know people that were deep into building businesses that are nowhere to be seen today. And I'm just like, what happened to them? But they decided this wasn't for them, or it wasn't working out. But one thing I love about you is that you just tried things. You like put some stuff out there. You took action, which then gave you answers to move forward. That's what I want my students to do as well. We've got to just put some stuff out there so it will lead us to the next place. You're a really good example of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it hasn't been easy, and it didn't happen overnight, and it's taken a lot of time, and I've evolved multiple times, but I think if you stay in this game, and I think you and I have this in common, and many of the people that we've brought up in this conversation have this in common. We start from a place of service, and we continue to serve. And if we just help people solve problems and continue to do that, it doesn't matter what the technology is. It doesn't matter what else comes along. It doesn't matter what all that stuff looks like. If we just step in that gap of serving people and help them figure out whatever their problems are, there will always be a place for us, no matter what it looks like, a course, a membership, whatever. And so that's what I try to share with my audience, is just serve people, and the rest will tend to take care of itself. Yes, you'll need to learn from Amy how to actually put it in a course and make some money on it. But if you start from a place of service and helping people solve problems, you usually can't go wrong from there.
Can't lose. Yep, I agree.
So thank you for sharing all that. That is amazing. And I'm sure there's people that are listening right now and they're like, oh my gosh, I want more. Like, Amy, that is so good. Like, what are the next steps? I'm ready. I think I'm ready, but I still have some questions. I understand you have a boot camp coming up where you're going to do a much deeper dive on some of these things that you talked about and more. So I don't know if you want to share a little bit about that.
Yes, I'm really excited. It's the first time I'm doing a digital course bootcamp. So earlier this year, I did one on list building, and it was so much fun, so successful. And I thought, That was awesome. I want to do that again. So I decided to do something called Course Confident. And it's a boot camp where it's 5 days and I am in the boot camp every single day teaching. And then I'm also in there doing Q&A and engaging with everyone. So I'm very, very present. And the goal is for you to make some core decisions around courses to decide if this is right for you and your business. So specifically, I'm going to take you through an exercise called the sweet spot to figure out what should your course topic be. Like, let's zone in or zero in on your course topic so you feel confident you're moving in the right direction. So that's the first training. There's a whole formula for that. And then I teach people how to choose the right type of course: spotlight, signature, starter course. I teach you how to choose that, give you a bunch of examples of what other people have done. And then from there, we determine the price of your course. So now that you know the price, we can do a little course math and look at what you could potentially make with your digital course over the next 6 months, over the next year. And then from there, we talk about building that list, because I cannot do any kind of training without helping people grow their email list. So we do a little audience building lessons and strategies as well. So we do these 3 trainings plus a bunch of other stuff that we do in the bootcamp. So at the end, you feel confident. Are you ready for a digital course or not? And the thing is, it's $47, the cheapest thing I offer online, and it is worth every penny of it. And I say 5 days, but we actually make it a little longer to make it more fun, but there's 5 days of trainings.
That is so incredibly generous of you. When I heard that you were doing this for $47, I got an email and I was like, did they leave out a 0 or 2 on there? Like, because there is so much good stuff there. And I saw your email list building one earlier in the year and I was like, that is amazing. That is so cool. All that stuff she's doing. So I know this will be incredible. I'll make sure links are in the show notes for everybody, but you can go to gambrill.com/Amy2022 and you can make sure you go register and get your spot for that. And you do not want to miss it, because I believe, and obviously Amy believes, that having a digital course is something that can set you on your path to freedom if that's what you really want. And so make sure you check that out. Yeah. So Amy, thank you so much. I don't know if you have any closing comments or asks for my audience before we go.
Oh, that's such a great question. Here's where I'll leave you. Like I said earlier, I believe everybody has a digital course in them. And the only difference between my students who have created beautiful, successful, lucrative digital courses and those who have not is taking that leap. And I believe that it starts with courage over confidence. So we don't have confidence in digital courses until we create one and make money with it. So everyone starts with 0 confidence in digital courses, but we all can find that courage to say, I want something better. I want something different. I'm going to take this leap and I'm just going to see how this works out. I'm going to allow myself to experiment here. So let's get that courage, take the leap. The first perfect step is the boot camp, and then you can decide if you want to continue from there.
That's amazing. Amy, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I really appreciate it. And everybody listening, again, the links will be in the show notes. And until next time, go unleash your awesome on the world. See ya.
Thanks for listening to Unleash the Awesome. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please share us on your favorite social media platforms using #UnleashAwesome.